Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Minnesota State Park Hiking Club Trail Series. Today we traveled to Blue Mounds State Park in Laverne, Minnesota. According to the DNR website, Blue Mounds was established initially as the Mounds Spring Recreation Reserve, which then was changed to Blue Mounds State Park in 1961. The park derives its name from the cliff of Sioux quartzite, which appeared blue to the settlers passing westward in the mid-1800s. Sioux quartzite was formed at the bottom of ancient rivers, and if you look closely, you can see the ripple marks from this sandy, watery origin in the rock. It formed when sandstone was converted through heat and chemical reaction into this extremely hard quartzite. The color is a result of the presence of iron oxide. The primary habitat of the park is the tallgrass prairie, a remnant of a habitat that once covered large swaths of North America. Alas, much of it was plowed for fields, which due to its rocky terrain this state park was mostly spared from, but was still impacted by the heavy grazing of domestic livestock. The park is undertaking special management programs to restore lost native grasses and wildflowers. A fun fact about this park is that it's one of the places you can see native cactus within Minnesota. They favor the ground above shallow rock quartzite outcroppings. The park is one of the 2 state parks that has bison herds. There are observation points and hiking trails that travel around the bison enclosure, and if you're unsure where the buffalo are, you can always ask one of the park employees, or better yet, the naturalist that keeps tabs on the whereabouts of the herd. The park also has deer and a small population of coyotes. There are numerous birds, but you can see how 200 years ago this was certainly favored terrain for elk and wolves, though neither grace the park currently. The park is also home to the threatened species of fish called the Topeka shiner. It's a small minnow of less than 3 inches in total length. They primarily live in pools and outlets outside of the main flow of water. This park and the nearby Touch the Sky Prairie are both great habitats that contain areas that this species prefers. This shiner's range only extends into this small corner of Minnesota, nearby South Dakota, and several small areas in Nebraska and Missouri, with some larger areas in Iowa and Kansas. Unsurprisingly, the Kansas range, according to the Environmental Conservation Online system, is just west of Topeka. The campground is now the only one in Minnesota State Park system that allows you to rent a teepee and sleep in it overnight. Upper Sioux Agency State Park used to as well, but with it being handed over to the Upper Sioux community, Blue Mounds is the only state park that remains where you can do that. There are wall tents that you can be rented in Afton, Meyer Big Island, and Sakatah Lake, but they're not as exciting as sleeping in a teepee. There is also rock climbing available at the park. The hiking club trail starts by the far side of the buffalo enclosure. The initial part of the trail is rock prairie, which provides a nice clear view into the bison enclosure, and while the bison don't come across great in this video, if you bring a pair of binoculars, you'll likely be able to see them just fine. Even without, they are visible to the naked eye. Keep an eye down to your feet as well. For this section, as while I was hiking, I managed to see a prairie skink running across the trail, as well as numerous of the native prickly pear cactus near the rocky quartzite outcroppings that dot the sides of the trail on this initial stretch. The trail takes you out to Eagle Rock and then swings back around, passing by the alignment of rocks. An interesting little feature of the park that has caused numerous arguments as to its purpose, from something to direct buffalo off the cliff while hunting, to just some guys who wanted to pile rocks in a short line. Shortly after the alignment, keep your eye out, and you'll be able to see the old quartzite quarry and the spectacular cliffs that remain. It's worth a minute, even in the hot sun, to pause and appreciate the cliffs. After the next prairie section, the habitat changes as you get closer to Mound Creek. There are more trees and shade. There's a nice bridge that lofts you over the creek and gives you a great view of the area. While I was looking over the bridge, a beaver stopped in the trail ahead and started to watch me. The trail then turns left, and after a short while, a small offshoot trail appears. I took it out of curiosity, and I'm glad I did. As I approached the area, a heron took flight, but I got a good look at him. The trail leads to a small beaver dam that I admired a little bit before moving onward. During this stretch of the trail by Mound Creek, the rocky cliffs are constantly visible, and only briefly do you ever get out of eyesight of them. There's a small overlook further down the trail that I chose to take rather than the bypass trail that seemed to overshoot it. It's a nice overlook that's worth going to, as you're on a small cliff overlooking the creek. The final stretch of the trail brings you across a more open prairie section and Upper Mound Lake. The coolest section for me was seeing the campground from the other side of Upper Mound Lake, which is perched atop a rocky cliff. My favorite part of this hike was all the wildlife I saw. During the hike, I saw buffalo initially, but on the same route, saw that prairie skink. Later on in the trail, besides the numerous other birds I saw, that large heron and the beaver within just such a short period of time. Towards the end of the trail, I also caught a glimpse of a muskrat making his way across Mound Creek. I've not seen this level of wildlife on any of the other state park trails I've taken, except perhaps Meyer Big Island. Thank you for watching, and if you like this addition to the series, like and subscribe. Also, let us know which state park you'd like to see next.